All right, everybody, welcome back to the Attack the Rack podcast. I am your host, Kurt Van Hecken, and you are tuning in to the number one rated podcast on the planet by the people that rated it number one. The Attack the Rack podcast, as always, is brought to you by Get to Two Media. Today we have yet another special guest. Today we've got Mike Benko on the program. Mike is a longtime friend. We go back to the days of Little League. Mike has worked in a career in professional sports on the ticket sales side. He's worked for the Philadelphia Phillies, the Texas Rangers, the Tampa Bay Rays, the Washington Nationals, and is currently working for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And before we dive into this conversation with Mr. Mike Benko, we got to take a second to thank the sponsor of the program today. Today's sponsor is communication. Communication is very key in almost every aspect of life. You need it to talk to other human beings, whether it's via a face-to-face chat, a phone chat, a text conversation, or sending emails. If you are lacking in those talking skills, you need communication. All right, we do have Mike Benko here today on the program. Mike, thank you so much for being here. I know we've tried to put this together for quite a while now, but with you and your job with the Jacksonville Jaguars, obviously fall is a busy time, especially towards the end there. Things got pretty hectic, I would imagine. And now things are kind of slowing down a little bit, and we were able to set this up. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, kind sir. It's been a hell of an adventure the last couple weeks, especially, but even before that, quite a season to remember for us, and excited to kind of dive into some of those details a little bit later.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, Mike, like so many of the guests I've had on the program, you know, you and I go way back. I mean, Little League baseball. I think that, you know, I was trying to think. I think I knew you through Little League, late elementary years. I don't remember if we were on the same team or just from playing against each other, but I think I realized who you were through Little League before I even realized that you went to my elementary school. You were a grade below me at Maplewood. I was in 5th grade. You were in 4th grade. I think so. That's when we first kind of met, but I don't think it was through school. I think it was more through Little League.
I was friends with the Maplewood crew. I spent one half of a year at Longfellow, actually, but then we all migrated to East Middle School in Holland anyway. So, yes. But my friends from that neighborhood, Chad Carlson, Jeff Kitty, Craig Lawton, Owen Handy. I mean, that's why I would ride my bike up that way. And then, you know, like you said, you were a part of that as well. Crazy baseball memories. Having moved from a bigger town in Illinois and being an only child with a father who was big into sports and playing ball. I felt a little bit further along the way with my progression, even at 10 years old. That's a thing. I mean, that matters. So moving over to a program that was kind of still developing or being rejuvenated was maybe a bit of an advantage. But I mean, what's it mean now when we're old guys that I had a curveball when I was a kid? I mean, it doesn't mean anything, but yeah, that was a fun time.
Yeah, and I don't remember if we ever were actually on the same Little League team, but we definitely were on the same team for like all-star tournaments, and those were a ton of fun.
Were you in the SCRA tournament where we had to take
Yes.
numbers on our jerseys? Was that one of ours together? Duct tape numbers, I believe.
Yes, and I remember there was a game when we were down like 10-1 in the last inning, and you and I got the old dugout going with the
it was we did the neener sound with the straws in our hats, and we did that was rally caps before they were called rally caps, or we were borrowing from the big leaguers or something, but it was
we were
cutting edge for us. It was cutting edge for us. It was fun times. I even feel like that was a cold, rainy day for some reason. Now I'm remembering. I don't know if that was accurate.
No, I think you're right. And sure enough, we did come back in and win. But that was like late elementary, middle school years, high school. I remember our Spanish class together with a couple other yahoos. We did not make it easy on our teacher. But thinking about that, I remember there's something, we made quite a trade that year. That would have been, I think, my junior year, your sophomore year, I think, or maybe my senior year, your junior year. No, my junior year, your senior year, Spanish class. I was on the basketball team, and after that first week of practice, we would spend the night in the Dutch Dome overnight. We'd practice Friday night. We'd stay overnight and then practice again in the morning. That practice always did get canceled, but anyway. And we would just, watch movies, hang out, have fun, play games, whatever. And our assistant coach, Mr. Steve Windemaller, who has been mentioned on this program quite a few times. He had a couple businesses where he had leftover gear, hats, t-shirts, sports stuff. And he brought them in, and we took half-court shots. And if you made a half-court shot, you got to pick something from the pile of hats, shirts, and whatever. And I think I was the first one to make it. So I had my pick of the litter. And for some reason, I picked a New England Patriots hat. Now, mind you, this is like Tom Brady's probably a freshman in college at this time. No one knows who Tom Brady is. The Patriots have not won anything yet. So I was obviously ahead of my time there. But I don't know how this came about. Somehow you knew that I won this New England Patriots hat, and you approached me in our Spanish class and said, hey, I want that hat. And we ended up trading. I don't know where you got it, but you had an actual foam Cheesehead, Green Bay Packers Cheesehead, and we traded.
I remember that. I still have the hat somewhere. It's white, old Patriots logo. The Cheesehead, I believe, came from my dad's job. He brought it home from somebody who had the pleasure of going to Lambeau Field for a game. I was into sports cards quite a bit. Drew Bledsoe became a favorite of mine because I think his card was worth something, and I still remember certain things about some of that. But I was onto the Patriots because of the, it was always some other reason. It was because I liked their colors, or I watched them on TV, or I got their, quarterback's rookie card. So it was one of those. I had the Packers weren't, I believe Favre was playing, but they didn't have the kind of the history. The good solid chunk of success that they've had here in the last however long, 20 years, 30 years. That was just kind of becoming a thing. So I had no association with the Cheesehead, although looking back, I would probably rather have that. But I had so much intent on securing the Patriots hat that I just didn't know any better. So yeah, that was it was an uneven trade, but I'm happy for you. I don't know if you still have that or what you do with it if you do have it, but I don't know, what is it, a doorstop or who knows what at this point. But Yeah, that's a good memory for sure.
Yeah, I don't know where it is. I'll be honest with you. If it's anywhere, it would be my parents' basement. And as I was prepping for this, I definitely wanted to go and search for it, and I will do so because that was pretty cool. I mean, that was a high quality cheesehead.
It's the real deal, and it weighed a little bit too. I think part of it was I just was tired of showing it off because you make my neck go to one side, and wanted to offload that heavy item around walking around the school. I don't know why was it even at school? Like, who brings a cheesehead to school?
Mike Benko.
I do.
Mike Benko does. All right. So, and we had all these connections growing up, but we really never hung out that much until college. We went to the same college, and that's where we started to hang out more. We had a lot of mutual friends, but we ourselves never really hung out a ton until college. And, one thing that we, I think we gained a close friendship through summer jobs as well. Did a little painting together, and then our classic college job, working on campus at Hope College, cleaning the buildings and the cottages and stuff like that. That was a ton of fun.
And hey, now I'm married to a fellow cleaner, so it all works out. I mean, people that have that job stick together. The way you brought that up, the painting job I still have nightmares about that. And it's no offense to the nice fellows that were running the program, but we had to work quick and efficiently. And I think we maybe had a few tools missing from the toolbox. And the amount of work and the task we had to overcome in those few short weeks that I lasted at that job were a bit much. I think it was set up for failure, even though it had good intentions.
You're talking about the painting job.
The painting job. I can't believe you referenced it because I'd go home at night that summer, and I would close my eyes, try to fall asleep, and get ready to paint again. And all I would see is brush strokes. I'd see my little roller in my vision when I closed my eyes because I was so conscious of somebody standing at the bottom of the ladder telling me to hurry up. Like, that's going to soak in, and you're going to need a third coat and a fifth coat. And I'm like, come on. And we got to beat the budget. And
the budget. I was just going to say the budget. That was the big
my first exposure with budgets. And now I'm asking people about their budgets on the phone at work. So, again, these are the parallels we discover.
And then, there's one other thing from college, one classic moment, just completely random. I was a fifth year senior, and it was your actual senior year, and you were starting to look at grad schools, and you wanted to go visit UMass, and for some reason, the opportunity, approached itself for me to go with you, and I was like, sure, I'll go to UMass for a weekend, and that was so fun. It was cool seeing their campus and stuff, but and then we went into Boston. Obviously, spent a lot of time in Boston. Great city. That was a lot of fun. And then I'll tell you what, one of the worst nights ever ended this trip. We had, I think, like a 5 a.m. flight Sunday morning. And, we're young. We're 21, 22 years old. And we wanted to be social. We wanted to check out the social scene in the city of Boston. And we went to a bar, a club. What was it called? I think
Purple Shamrock or Purple Mushroom or something. And it was a mix between a dive bar. It was like a dive bar size with a club vibe, but there was like 3 tables. But then they had like a DJ in the corner. It was, I don't know why we thought it was a good idea, but go on.
Yeah. And I think we realized, and we didn't have a hotel for that night. We just needed to kill the time until our flight left at 5. So at like midnight or 1, we're like, well, we should probably get to the airport. So we got to the airport, 2 a.m. And for those next 3 hours, it was just straight misery, just exhausted, tired, wanting nothing more than a bed. And, but you know what? We battled through. And we won. So
if you don't mind, I have some feelings about that trip, and let me tell it from my perspective because I think it's valuable information. Number one, my dad entertained the idea of, if you can find a buddy stupid enough to go to Massachusetts, I think it was winter time. It was very, very cold. I remember that. It was icy everywhere. If you can find anybody that would go with you, I'll help pay for that. So I believe it was a free opportunity, and who wouldn't do that? Who wouldn't do that? A couple of good buddies. But we got to wherever I guess we landed in Boston, had to drive into Amherst, spend the time there for the interview process and the grad school tour or whatever, and then drive back to Boston. And I remember getting in the rental car and turning on the radio, and like WGN was coming in from Chicago. So I believe the reason is it was so cold and the air was so thin that the signal could travel that long. So that was bad sign number one. Number two, check into our hotel on campus, and I figured, why don't I go ahead and tie up my tie, like put the knot, practice putting it on, so that in the morning when I have to dress up, which I wasn't accustomed to doing very much at the time, I'll just be able to slip it back on and we'll have no problems. I went to the restroom or the bathroom in the hotel we were staying to use the mirror. Couldn't figure it out. Almost felt like crying. I'm thinking, I got my first big interview tomorrow for this grad school opportunity, and I can't even get a tie on my person. And then I went out in the hallway and I called my dad, and he was trying to explain it to me. And then I was kind of auditioning back in the bathroom, and I still couldn't figure it out. And I spent probably an hour doing this, and you were probably watching the ball game or something, and I'm screwing around with my tie. And so needless to say, very little rest that night. I somehow figured it out, but I get to this interview, and just so the listeners are aware, I ended up going to Ohio State, so completely different. We'll get to that maybe later, but I'm thinking Amherst and UMass is like this big thing. I know that they're a very academically sound sport management program. That's where you go if you want to be a sport management professor or an author, or, something along those lines. So I get to the interview, and it's nothing to do with sports facilities. We didn't look at the basketball gym. We didn't go to the football field. We didn't do any of that. We sat in a big giant conference room with a big long table with me at one end and about 6 to 8 professors and graduate assistants spread out around the table. And I'm, like you said, 21, 22, first time in my life I've done anything like that. And they really just wanted to know, why do you want to do this? What are you going to do with it? And I was scared to death of the situation. I'm glad we got to spend time in the city. And you remember we went to a Celtics game, and the guy in the street was yelling, "Loge box, get your Loge box." And we kept saying Loge box. And then there was some sort of bomb scare during the game where it was on like TNT or ESPN, and they paused the game for 10 minutes, and they needed to make sure everything was clear. And this is just post 9/11, I guess, but
2 years after 9/11.
Yeah. So the nation's still on heightened awareness about things like that. And my gosh, we packed a lot in, looking back, and at the end of the day, the thing that gets dwarfed out of the whole story is that silly grad school interview. Who cares? We made it, and we made it through the airport, and we made it in life, and we're doing okay. And so it's funny how that works out.
Yeah, no, I can't believe I forgot about the Celtics game. That was great. And we also, we weren't able to go inside, but we went, we did do a little walk around Fenway. That was really cool too.
I don't remember that. Okay. I remember it now that you say it. I remember we went to Cheers, right? Like everybody does.
Yeah, we did.
But I don't know if we went in, and I think we might have just seen it. I think it's down. Isn't it down off the sidewalk?
Yes.
Yeah. And so, yeah, good memories.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will come right back with more of the Attack the Rack podcast. And we are back. All right, so Mike, you mentioned that you did end up at Ohio State. How did that come about?
Yeah, crazy.
Grad school.
For grad school. This is following our time together at Hope College. I don't know if it was after the UMass interview or not, or if I had simultaneous applications out, but sport management, which is just essentially, generally speaking, the business side of sports. And that includes like working at games and putting on a game. That was relatively new when I was finishing up my time at Hope in 2003. So there was only a few schools that had a national reputation. Like we talked about, UMass was an academically sound school, but didn't have the practical experience. It didn't mean as much to, stand on the sideline of a UMass game. But Ohio State was more that way, where we have the big football stadium, the nice facilities. Come down and be a part of that. So I was invited to go down to Columbus this time around. It's not as fun of a trip. My dad went with me, and I think that was a calming mechanism, really looking back, that he could kind of talk to me on our drive down. And if I couldn't tie my tie, he could help me with that. But, just the general kind of father figure, which he obviously, literally is, worked to my advantage. And it just had a ball. Like I walked in into the football stadium, they gave us the bobblehead and t-shirt or whatever it was, and it was set up for kind of like, this is your day, so we're gonna take you around the football field, we're gonna have lunch with a view of the facility, we're gonna walk down here and go over there, and very interview free, really. It was more kind of like, we want to match up the person who applied, we just wanted to meet you and make sure. So I think by the time we got home or the day after, I already had a call saying, I think we had a voicemail at our home phone that I had been accepted to that program, which who knows if that was a big deal or not. To me, it was at the time. And so that was our destination. And when I got down to Ohio State, it was 15 months of classes. So it was barely over a year. And I worked in event management. That means men's and women's volleyball matches, men's and women's soccer, hockey, both men and women. I think women had a team. And then I got one football game, and I got to do the men's basketball home schedule, which was pretty cool. That was probably the highest profile. When we had Bobby Knight when he was with Texas Tech. So their bus pulls into they called it elephant doors, which if you're having a circus at an arena, you got to be able to get the big guys in. So some of the teams that didn't want to be seen out, on campus unloading their players and coaches would pull into the arena and do it there. So I walk over, and Bobby Knight gets off the bus, and I walk him and the team to the locker room, and I open the door and I say, "This is yours." And then I go receive the officials, and I don't know, one of the guys, Ted Valentine, maybe. There's those names we grew up with. And then you candidly, colorfully will say, you see those guys, you might open the door to the referee's locker room, and the guy you see on TV's, changing his pants or something, not to be graphic, but you see these guys in random situations. You see, like Patrick Ewing Jr. came in with Indiana, and I saw him like kissing his girlfriend outside the locker room. And you just have to get used to these, walking by these random situations.
They're normal people. They're regular people.
Exactly. That's the very first thing you realize. And that's true all the way through what I do now. Sometimes these guys hold the door for you when you come to work. I mean, that's just the way it is. But that was I guess, looking back, and the important part of all that is I learned that at such a young age. I mean, I'm 22, 23, tell my mom and dad to turn on ESPN. Every time the ball goes by half court, there's your son sitting there, reading the script to the PA announcer. That was something I did. That's pretty powerful. I mean, that gives you some confidence. And that wasn't an official paid position. That was just another variety of school and class and all that. But it had the experience piece built in, where it really left an impression on me. And something we haven't even talked about, but I had an internship my junior year at Hope, and I worked for the Phillies. I had Major League Baseball experience as a junior in college, coupled that already at my young 20s with putting on events for Ohio State sports. I did parking, I did referees, I gave them their money to buy their per diem. I did the ball kids at soccer games. I was retrieving volleyballs. So you do everything, and that includes Bobby Knight on some occasions, and then other times you're putting balls back in the bin at the girls' volleyball game. So it's all those things, and that's just invaluable experience, I think.
Yeah, definitely. You when you were with the what I did want to touch on, I should have asked you about this when we were talking about college days. What did you do in that internship with the Philadelphia Phillies?
So I was a communication major, and I still don't know what that means, but um, part of a communications path to graduation entails the option of doing what's it called? It's a semester away. I forget the name of it. And there was like 3 cities on the roster, and one of them was Philadelphia. So long story short, I got the confidence to do that. I even had my professor, Jim Herrick, who was a neighbor of ours in Holland, came across the street and sat down in the family room with my family and explained to me that I'll be okay if I go there. So we made an agreement that young Mikey can go to Philadelphia. So you get out there, and you take 1 or 2 classes, but it's more about these universities coming together, and the college kids in the Midwest coming together, and the small school kids, and basically creating a life for yourself in the city. You got to go out and get an apartment and pay rent and buy groceries and all these things. And they had a database of jobs and jobs that you could apply for while you were in town through this program. So these are just 3-month internships, and there was a sports page, and it was Philadelphia Eagles, Flyers, and Phillies. And I put my name in for all 3. And I got calls or interviews with the Eagles and the Phillies, and interviewed for both. And I don't recall how extensive this was, because I believe we were technically competing against anybody who needed an internship nationwide. It wasn't just from our program. It was just that our program had the connection to the hiring manager, I guess. But interviewed with at least 2 of them, and ultimately the Phillies I felt the best about, and that was the one I was offered. The job itself was simply incoming single game tickets and probably parking and questions like that. So, do you have tickets for Saturday night's game? I only need 4, and I would know how to access my computer information. And the technology wasn't very advanced at the time, but yes, I see section whatever, 4 times 50, $200. And how do you want to pay for that? I don't even remember recording payment information. So who knows what happens once an order was placed, but it was just a wholesome experience. The coolest thing was just walking through the Veterans. This was when Veterans Stadium was still around in Philadelphia.
Right.
Walking through the parking lot, taking the big boy subway out to the edge of the city, doing all of those things, coming into work with a tie on and a bag over my shoulder. That's what I remember. And I remember, of course, how cool it is to go out to a bar and have a drink, and you're, the junior in college telling people you work at the Phillies, and hey, if you want to trade tickets for a Phillies game, I might be able to go to something else. And I actually did that once. I traded a guy on the campus of Penn University. We were just out having a beer, and I traded him a couple Phillies tickets, and he gave me Sixers and Celtics playoff tickets. So I went to a playoff game, and I think Allen Iverson and Paul Pierce going head to head. And we could check that later with stats and info, but
we'll have our producer Dale look that up.
These are things. The fact that you're asking me these questions, and I really appreciate this time, is bringing back an understanding that this was very important to where I am now and what I know about life. What happens by way of doing this conversation is you find new meaning to things you probably weren't going to think about again until somebody asked you about it. So that's cool.
So you mentioned with the Phillies, one thing you were doing was tickets. As you're careers moved on to a couple different professional sports teams, organizations. That's um, you know, primarily what you worked in. Did you, when you were doing this ticket thing with the Philadelphia Phillies as a junior in college as an internship, is that what sparked your interest or at that time when you're in the sports management, or as you then went into sports management? What was the end goal? What were you wanting to do?
So that's a whole nother kind of subtopic. And in trying to summarize a little bit, the problem I had when I was younger is the only, like, I'll just bring out the word sales because it's an uncomfortable word for me across my life. And I think I used to imagine that word as meaning something that was like, kind of like you were pre-born into this sales body that suggests that you're just a sales guy. You're a used car salesman. You're a vacuum cleaner. You're the guy on late night TV. You're the guy that walks up to you at the store when you don't want to talk to anybody. And I'm not that person. I'm more honest than that. I'm more appreciative of getting to know you. I don't know if I want to ask people for money. I don't know if I want to like tell them what they ought to do. And it's hard for me to answer. Like if you want to have a place to park your car tonight and you want to buy it in advance and we don't have any parking spaces left, I don't want you to not even have a sour taste in your mouth about something small like that before you even come to the game. And so I didn't know if I was cut out to do all of those things. And somewhere along the line, I understood that like you just have a communications degree, which I guess, or communication, you must have an affinity for the human language or multiple ways to get through to people, or maybe that means something. And then you equate that to, well, you didn't study marketing, you didn't study finance, you didn't study public relations, you studied communication. What is that? Well, that's probably selling. That's probably telling people the good things about what you have to offer. And I kind of eventually realized that also is kind of what's available. Teams are, I mean, that generates revenue, and revenue is what keeps these teams and businesses going. And so you make that connection and you say, these are actually pretty important jobs that are probably available to people with degrees like me. And at the end of the day, if it's still associated with the team, if it's still numbers, if I still get to talk about the team and the players and the performance, like I can do that. And so that was probably that's combining many years of doing this and thinking about it a little bit, but it's something like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, for sure. And then after you were done at Ohio State, then your first job was with what organization?
Ohio State. So I had, as part of Ohio State, I had an interview, or I had an internship. They called it a capstone internship. It was, you got to have one big bang at the end of your time to be able to officially walk and take your degree. So I applied with the USOC, United States Olympic Committee, and I got offers from like the Taekwondo, I believe it was Taekwondo or something like that, out in like Colorado, or the Bobsled and Skeleton Federation in Lake Placid, New York. And for some reason, I guess the New York one just made more sense. So young Mikey left Columbus and went up to the Adirondack Mountains for a few months and lived amongst the athletes on the bobsled and skeleton team. And that was during some sort of work stoppage in the NHL. And so Chris Chelios during that time decided he was going to start a Greek bobsled team because there was none. And he was going to partner with Laird Hamilton, who's a world famous surfer. And I think he's an entrepreneur, and he's well known outside of just surfing to a certain amount. He's married to Gabrielle Reese, the old volleyball gal. So I'm up there having beers now and going bowling and doing fun things with people I know nothing about. And these are just kids who grew up in cold climates with a sliding track so they could take their sleds and then later toboggans and bobsleds and whatever they imagine and just get good at that. And it's no different than local anything kid that rises from the local ranks and all of a sudden they're a world famous athlete now. It's the same thing, except we didn't necessarily grow up around that. I think Muskegon was the closest to us that had any of that, with luge, I think. And so another thing I learned, I mean, that concluded the grad school thing. And then if I can keep talking, I'll just keep going here. But then we encounter the Major League Baseball winter meetings out in Anaheim, California. And similar to your trip with me to Amherst for the UMass interview, my dad again put up the same offer. If you could find anybody in the close family that wants to get on a plane and go to California for several days, by all means, I'll help you out with that. And so my cousin Jimmy went out there with me, and it was and you know him well from our time at Hope. And we spent 4 days out that way, living out of a hotel, and I would go interview with major league, minor league, any baseball, anything was represented. And there was kind of a job fair in addition to just, the winter meetings are when there's player transactions, but it's also a time for teams to look to hire. I ended up taking a job. I met a guy that I was just comfortable with, and he seemed to like me pretty well. Sacramento, that's like the Giants AA or AAA team. I'm drawing a blank, which is pretty sad because Fresno Grizzlies, I think it was, Fresno, California. Guy offers me a group sales account executive job, which at 42 years old, I'm a group sales account executive in the NFL, but somebody was offering me this position back then, and it was X amount plus maybe if you sell some tickets, you'll make a couple other dollars. And I said, if that's all I've got, I guess I'm moving to California. And because I had been to Philadelphia, I said that's doable. And I lived in New York and I lived in Columbus. And all of a sudden now I have experiences like that. So I took the job, but somewhere along the line, I figured out that this Tampa Bay Devil Rays had a new inside sales department starting, which was like an entry-level sale. And that's Major League Baseball. That's not AAA. And, oh, wait, the hiring manager is from Hope College. His name is Clark Beacom. Do you know who Clark Beacom is?
That name really, really rings a bell.
He might have been a year or two older than us.
Okay.
But old Clarky boy somehow is a sports sales professional at this point. And I said I wasn't going to mention names, but I don't think he'll find me here. We may never know. He was hiring, and this job had none of the frills of the other one. It wasn't a package with insurance. It was like $8 an hour, and we'll audition you in the big leagues at the old Tropicana or whatever. And so I took that. I had to call the guy back, and he said, I understand, even though we already drafted you a contract or whatever, and just promise me you'll never do this to anybody else again. Like, don't do this later in your career because it's not a good look. And I said, I know, but Major Leagues and the guys from Hope, I get down there with like 6 other people. This is my very first like job. And I'm rooming with a Hope College buddy who's nice enough to put me up while I kind of get my footing. And we show up and we're somewhere like in the hallway of the upper deck of the something. I don't know where. This place is a dump, number one. It kind of still is that way. And so we get there and there's no phones. There's no like leads. There's no anything other than kind of like sit at your desk and pretend that you care, but we're not going to teach you anything. We're not going to give you anything. We're just going to kind of. And then I remember a couple of weeks later, they brought in some sales guru guy, and he went around and goes, nope. They're not going to be good at this. This one guy or 2 guys here might be. And so we were all like told this isn't for us about 4 weeks into it. And so my very first Major League Baseball job, I drove all the way down to Tampa and moved into my buddy's apartment, went to work for about a month and was never actually on the job. I don't think I had a phone. And somebody told me I wasn't good enough. And so I was able to rebound because the Philadelphia spring training happened to be in Clearwater, and my buddy's apartment was like right next door. So I'm living next to like the Phillies minor league facility. or the Philadelphia Threshers, they were called. So they moved their act down there in March, and I had just moved down in January for my Devil Race job, and so the natural connection was to just beg and plead to get like give me some dollars, and I'll come sit in the box office like I did in Philadelphia. So I was rescued accidentally in this case, with the Philadelphia connection. So already that's playing a part. All I had to say was, I'm only gonna be here for a month. I'm harmless because I just got done doing this. It's sitting in the window or answering the phone and handing out 2s and 4s to people, and I can do that. And so luckily I actually had a pleasant experience. I was able to get some autographs. Jim Tomey was one, Jimmy Rollins and Pat Burrell, and so I could walk over and get them to sign for me and watch them train, which was cool because that was my team still. And then I would work some nights during games, and that was kind of a neat thing. And then once that was done, I ended up, I don't know how detailed we need to get here, but I met a gal when I was down there that struck my fancy. So we ended up going back to Michigan. I moved my act back to Michigan, but this girl was visiting Florida, but was from Texas, and Mike was there. Van Hecken.
I remember Mike going to Texas.
Yeah. So Mike was in Florida though when I met the girl that he came to see me when I was living in Texas. Like, this is all connected.
You know who else was there? I don't remember you meeting her, but you know who else was there?
No.
Mike and I were there on spring break or a spring vacation. We were out of college, so it wasn't spring break. And we were at Disney, and we drove down to see you for a day, or maybe we stayed a night. I don't remember.
Yeah. I remember going to see Andy play.
Yep.
Or he didn't play. We visited him at the property, and we sat in the room for a while and watched college basketball. I think he like took us out to Fridays or something.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
But I thought Mike was staying with me for a few days, and then we drove like inland towards you guys, and you were already with Andy. That's what I remember.
Yeah, no. I think you're right. I'm sorry. Mike didn't come down with us. Mike went down to see you, and then okay, that's what it was. Mike then came with you to hang out with us for a day or something like that.
Yeah,
that's how it went.
So,
but I think I drove back with Mike to your place after you came to visit us. I don't remember because I remember your apartment in Tampa.
Huh. Very possible. I mean, those days you have a beverage about every 5 minutes, so especially when you're living in Florida. But what struck me about that was Mike was kind of a new friend too in the scheme of things. I know, like when he and Chad Carlson formed their dynamic duo at Holland High School and kind of took off as the basketball boys. When you're a former player or you used to play with them, and then they're obviously just at another level, you kind of let that go and you don't necessarily hang out as much because now they're playing and practicing together, and you're not any longer associated with that quite as much. Mike didn't become a friend of mine until we started hanging out together at Hope, and then he after that became very loyal as far as like, oh yeah, hey, I'll come down. And I think that was new for him. Like, he was kind of being empowered by the fact that I can get on a plane and go visit Mike, and that's fun. I'm going to go do that. Oh, you're in Texas now? I'm going to go do that. It's cool how that works. And so we met this girl there was another girl from Holland High School, and I won't mention her name right now, but she's a neighbor of ours in Holland, and she was down with the girl from Texas. And so I go back after the Phillies minor league thing wrapped up. So basically the start of the major league season. Now I'm back in Michigan saying, I just tried that, and the freaking Devil Rays thing didn't work. And the Threshers thing was nice, but I'm not going to sit in a box office of a minor league team and make a living off of it. So I think I went back to Hope, and I don't know if I paired up with you that summer, but I got one more like summer out of it when they worked me in somehow. So now I'm back doing that for third or fourth year. and just stayed in contact and decided after that I'm going to just get some courage and go down to Texas. And it was for the girl. So I don't know what I'm going to do for work. I'm just confident I'm going to find something. I get down there, I spend a month messing around and eventually just, I think I had a minor league hockey interview out there. So I flew to Fort Worth on their dollar and interviewed, and I don't even know if I've heard back from them yet. So I don't think I'm going to get that job because that was 20 years ago, but they haven't returned my inquiry. So that one didn't work out, but I went down there and I eventually got the courage to go to the Texas Rangers and just basically knock the door over in a polite way and say, I don't know what you've got going on around here. Like if you've already got a new group of hires and your sales department is fully staffed, but I think I deserve an opportunity. Can I sit with someone and appeal to them for 5 minutes? And I eventually got an interview with the inside sales manager, which inside sales is typically, from my experience, about 8 to 10 highly qualified recent college graduates, oftentimes with about 2 or 3 pretty good interviews and maybe some practical experience. So, I interned with this and that place, and I also did a little bit of work here. Now I'm ready for the big league. So you hire a large group of those. You kind of call them a class, and it's a little bit unconventional because in normal business you don't hire, I don't think, too commonly just bring in 10 people almost like an audition on a reality show, and then at the end of the process you kick out the 7 or 8 you don't like or that need to find something else to do I don't want to sound harsh, but that's what happens in these roles. And then the 1 or 2 stay. So I begged a little bit there, and I got an opportunity, and I came in with a completely new mindset that I'm going to take this extremely seriously. I'm going to show up first and stay longest and make the most calls. And I was the 10th person of the 10 to be hired on. And within short time, I was the number 1 rep in the room. And it was kind of 1 and 2 with it, eventually with another guy. And I think I finished first or second. I don't remember, but I made a good push. And the guy that I was competing with, his name is Todd. He now works for the Minnesota Twins. He's been there 17 years or so now. And he's now a director, I think, of suite sales or premium. He was just promoted. So it's good to know that exists. And then I eventually got an opportunity to move upstairs to what they call an account executive, which basically is a bit beefier of a compensation package. Now you're a full-time employee with benefits. Now you are eligible for bonuses. And so worked my way up to the Rangers the hard way and in the long way, and did that for a while. And then I'll just go ahead that I had my eye on the Washington Nationals, because there's a point in your lifespan of being a new ticket rep where if you don't know your fate after so long, you kind of got to hurry up. So I wasn't sure I was going to get promoted from the Rangers from the inside sales department to the upstairs account executive floor. So I got talking about other things, and one of those was the Washington Nationals. And one of our good friends, Peter Hunsberger, was already out there. That's another guy that I got to kind of know pretty good at the end of college, similar to you and Mike. And he had a few friends that were living together, and they needed a roommate soon, or they had a 4th spot or something. And that was a new stadium, so I was getting onto this like, okay, I understand Veterans Stadium in Philadelphia was old. That was an old AstroTurf cookie cutter deal, and the Nationals. That's I kind of said nation's pastime in the national capital or something like that. I combined some words and I said, that sounds pretty big time. And that would be something where, wouldn't that be like a better situation? Wouldn't that be a little bit more excitement and maybe a little bit more hands-on? And so I had interviewed the first year around Thanksgiving time. I say the first year because I interviewed twice with them, but it was a year apart. So
Okay.
somewhere in the middle of the Rangers promotion happening, I got a little bit worried and I started doing something else. So I went out there. They said, "You're not ready yet for us. You're not going to get, because we don't know you. The Rangers, you probably have a better shot because you're already there. You can't go laterally to a better position, or whatever the word is, side to side movement
Lateral move. Yep.
to a better position with a team that doesn't know you." So I said, "Well, what do you want me to do about it?" And he said, "Email me every month just to give me an update. Just send me a professional, concise. Here's what I've been doing lately." So I went back and I told my folks and my support group about that, and I literally did exactly that for 1 full year. Hi, it's me. This is what I did this week. This is where I rank on the board. This is still where my eyes are set. Like, this is still where I want to be. I want to be with you, but I'm here. But look, I'm doing good things about it. And I did that for long enough where he probably said, "Holy crap, this guy's listening to what I asked him to do." And I got a call at some point in that, after I was promoted with the Rangers, and I just had to do that because it was kind of double of where I was. It was everything they offered or mentioned was twice as good as the current situation. So I left a good situation for an even better situation. And needless to say, the girl thing didn't work out. So at that point, you got no attachments, and so yeah.
All right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we will come right back with more of the Attack the Rack podcast. And we are back. All right, Mike. So you now are moving from Texas to Washington, D.C. to work for the Washington Nationals. You are how old now?
I'm 27.
27 years old, and you now are working for your fourth Major League Baseball club. That's got to be pretty cool. For me, when I think about a job with a professional sports team, I'm thinking, it's got to be a ton of fun. You get to know the players. You get great seats at every single game. You go to every single game. Am I off base there?
You're
what are some of the perks? There's got to be perks.
The perks are easy to. I mean, they're perks, so by nature they sound perky. If I could say that. Yeah, definitely tickets, and kind of offshoot of that is the ability to give tours of the stadium, have you out, come have lunch out here, watch this, I'll show you around while you're on site with us here. If you need to, take a picture or something, it's right out the back door. One of my favorites, especially in Washington, was trade outs with local restaurants where you walk up to the general manager, ask who needs to speak with him. Oh, it's Mike. I'm with the team in town. Oh, okay. Yeah, he'll be right out. And then you say, "Listen, sir, I have 4 tickets to the Nationals and Cubs this weekend. Will you trade that for $100 of restaurant credit?" And then now you got a place to take your buddies or your date or whatever. And that was pretty amusing. And that never seemed to have anything to do with team performance. People wanted free baseball tickets, tickets and hospitality, and it's entertainment on my side. Hospitality is largely the same thing. We want people to come through our doors and eat with us, and then we want people to sit in seats and watch baseball and buy beer with us. So it's kind of the same thing. So you can trade those things. And then by way of being able to go to some of these places with the access, I mean, Peter came out one day with his crew from work, National Academy of Sciences, I believe it was called, and he brought, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 or 6. The people that we hung out with outside of work were his coworkers as well, and I got them on the field. I said, I've got this company coming through for tonight's game. We need to get them field passes. So I got to take my friends onto the field during batting practice, and Jimmy Rollins and Ryan Howard walked up. The Phillies were playing the Nationals. I made friends with people who were Phillies fans even while I was working for the Nationals. I kind of like the Phillies better, even though and I'm not that way now, but I was okay being that way back then. But that's another thing. I used to collect game used baseball bats of some big leaguers, and I had the fortune of being alerted to the fact that Manny Ramirez, the Dodgers were in town, and that was my favorite guy. Somewhere along the line decided Manny Ramirez is the best right-handed hitter I've ever seen in person. And maybe that was influenced by a trip to Boston, but he had just a deadly process to hitting the ball, and I know he was caught up in some bad things, but I still respect that. And there was a man who knew Manny's posse, kind of the comfort group he travels with, because there's a language difference, and he just, some of those big star athletes travel with a contingent of kind of a crew, like a rap star or something, a famous musician. So Manny's group notified somebody that knew me that he's willing to sell a bat, but you got to bring cash to the back of the dugout and hurry up. So I politely walked out of my desk, walked through the rubber hallway, the tunnel that goes underneath the stadium, to an ATM, like back behind the Dodgers dugout. I took out $500 cash and ran it to this guy in his car and handed it to him on the side of the road, almost like a deal gone wrong. And then he drove it up the street as I watched from kind of behind like a telephone pole. And Manny's boy ran out with a bat. He handed the cash out the window, and they said, "See you later." And I walked up to the guy that acquired my bat. It was my first ever Manny Ramirez Dodgers bat, bought with $500 cash right out the back door. And then I had to walk back through the tunnel. I put it in a cardboard mailing box, and I'm like, I'm just delivering this for work. And I walked it back to my desk and put it down. And so I remember somebody saying, "No, you didn't just do that, did you?" And I'm like, yeah, I did.
So that's the fun stuff. I'm sure you got a ton of stories like that, which we'll definitely have to have you back and just get into the stories you must have. But that's the fun stuff. You're working in ticket sales. What are the broadly what are the responsibilities working in sales for a professional sports team? Ticket sales.
It's painting a picture. This is the outlook for the season. We believe coaching is important, and we believe we have the right coach. And we believe, in baseball, our pitching staff is fully developed now. It's 3 veterans and 2 rookies on the up and up, and so we think that's a good package for the year. Then you talk about, you take the next step, and you talk about a lot of times opponents. Did you notice we got the Yankees 3 games over the 4th of July weekend? You notice the Red Sox are here on Saturday and Sunday. And so you're playing up the opponents as you're keeping in mind that we might also be competitive this year. And then you're talking about the facilities or it's a new ballpark. It's fireworks night.
Are you cold calling?
I'm doing.
Or are they calling you and then you're trying to upsell them, or are you? How does the communication with the client work? Who's contacting who, or both?
It's both. At the lowest kind of point along the ladder, you are almost exclusively cold calling, and a lot of times those are what we call qualified leads. So they're worthy of an attempt because they had season tickets all the way up through 2019, but they haven't done it in 2020 and 21. So can you get them back for 22, or in this case, 23 is approaching. So you almost kind of have to think for yourself, if I'm going to call this guy, I need to understand what possibly happened along the way. Was it like just using those example numbers, we can just pretend that, we'll say that was COVID was part of that. So maybe he had a health scare. Maybe the stadium was at lower capacity. He said, I don't want to mess around with that mask wearing stuff, or I don't feel comfortable going to a football game right now. I'm not going to do this for a while. Or maybe he said, I'm not a fan of your new head coach, or I don't believe your quarterback's the right guy, or I don't believe your pitching staff is good enough. And so you're kind of calling to say with an update in a sense of professionalism, hey, it's me with the team. Understand you had a rough go of it there for a minute, but let me bring some things to light that you might not know about or haven't thought about recently. So, from a high level perspective, that's ultimately what you're trying to do there when it's like, a true kind of colder lead. There's also, the higher you get up the ladder, the more experience you have, you're open to an incoming phone line. It's called different things with different teams, but it's somebody pressed some prompts that suggest that they're interested in season tickets, and now your job is to tell them more about that and see if you can lead it into a transaction. We also get email leads where it's somebody submits something online, and it's, here's my name, my phone number, and my email address, and here's a couple of boxes I checked. But you still have to be so aware that the first time you reach out to those people, you're representing the team you're associated with. So I am the Philadelphia Phillies. I am the Washington Nationals. I am the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm not nervous Nelly with the I don't know who's, because I haven't done this in a long. Like, you have to go into your best mindset. Take a breath. Hey, Kurt, Mike with the Jacksonville Jaguars. What can I help you with? Responding to your interest in season tickets. Want to know more about what you're interested in. Tell me about your business. Did you know we have this going on? And I bet I can help you with that. Or why don't we do this again? Very positive, forward-looking statements is kind of the and within that, once you master that kind of confidence and that calm about who you are is effective. I know when I listen to you talk to other people, Kurt, you have a way with just facilitating conversations. And so I need to do the same thing with the people. I need to respect my own ability to do things like you're able to do with your guests. And so I have to remind myself constantly, especially when I'm tired or I haven't sold something in a couple of minutes, like, and I say a couple of minutes loosely. I mean, that could be a couple of weeks or literally a couple of minutes, but it's a forever kind of challenge of being your best self while you're in that chair or while you're on the phone. And, it's a lot. It's not easy.
So yeah, I mean, the job you're in applies to obviously having the skill set of sales, but also a vast majority or a vast knowledge of sports, in particular the team you're working for. So, you're just a typical, salesman can't necessarily fit into this job unless that salesman also knows the team and sports and understands and can carry a conversation about the sport that your team is in. So one thing that's kind of keeps popping up in my head here, and this is certainly from looking from the outside in, I would imagine working for a competitive team or a winning team makes it a lot easier to sell tickets. If you're working for the New York Yankees versus the Washington Nationals when you worked for them, or even over the course of a few years where maybe a team isn't so good and now all of a sudden they're good, that has to make the sales process quicker and easier.
It
or
does.
Is that obvious?
It does. It also, and so your listeners are aware, the only thing I have to reference in the winning sense is this current position I'm in now. For quick background, I've been with the Jacksonville Jaguars for about 14 months now, so a little over a year. Moved down to Florida in November of 21. We can get to that a little bit, but this is the first time that the department I worked for wasn't necessarily like an add-on. Like the reason there's an inside sales department sometimes with certain teams in certain markets is because they just need anybody that they can get to try to generate something out of nothing. And the Rangers weren't very good when I was there. The Phillies weren't very good when I did that job even, but that was not inside sales. But the Rangers were not. The Nationals, disappointing, 100 losses 2 seasons in a row right out of the gate at the new ballpark. And so all of a sudden, this new ballpark, you're starting to sell tickets to things like Doggy Day and stuff like that, where you want to bring your dog out or bring your kid out during school. This is like a field trip day. It's like we would have weather day. What the heck is weather day? Well, that's, you tell the school kids that the local meteorologist will be presenting about like the barometer is rising and the balloon will go up, and you go, okay, that can be called a field trip now. And we'll also be selling some baseball tickets. And so that's how you get that way so quickly. 2 years into the life of the new ballpark, we're already resorting to that because the team stinks so dang much. And so this recent run, the Jaguars are, just finished off with their loss to the Chiefs on Saturday, or our loss to the Chiefs, I should say. I learned in sport management that we associate, maybe you've heard this, Kurt, you associate we with success and they with failure. So even though you're part of the same team, you change the word based on the outcome. And it makes a lot of sense. The run we just finished up in Kansas City on Saturday afternoon, the last 5, I don't know how closely you followed us when this first started. We were down 17-0 to the Raiders, and that was November 6th. And my folks were down from Michigan, so my parents were at their first Jaguar game. We sat together all afternoon and go down 17-0, and I tell them this is kind of what we're used to sometimes, and I don't know about this Davante Adams guy. And then all of a sudden, Trevor Lawrence put together a touchdown drive. I think first we got a field goal before halftime, touchdown in the second half, and won that game. And then just everything after that, we drove the length of the field against the Baltimore Ravens. We were down 19-10. We came back, scored late, down 1, and decided to go for 2-point conversion, won that game by 1 point. And we had to survive a Justin Tucker missed field goal that would have set the NFL record. Next home game, Dallas Cowboys scored 40 points on the Cowboys with a pick 6 in overtime. Craziest game I've ever been to. I couldn't even watch the last couple plays, and that was the beginning of something that would evolve, where I couldn't watch the very end of these wild comebacks because I had so much riding on it, just for how much I care about the team, and we'll cover that in a minute. But and then we move on. We beat the Titans to win the division, and we were down 10-0 in that game and had an improbable scoop and score late to finally take the lead in that game. We had the lead for less than 3 minutes, and then this last one against the Chargers back a couple of weeks ago, we're 27-0, and what do you know, we figured that one out somehow. So I'm still unpacking all this. This has been a very kind of call it, housekeeping type of week, and a little bit of rest and a little bit of I'm okay not picking up the phone every second of every day because Daddy needs a little bit of a break here. But
what that is just that is a crazy run to end the season. That Chargers, the Chargers game, the playoff game, one of the most craziest games I've ever seen. But I understand how that feels, having this incredible turnaround, because my team, the Detroit Lions, did the same thing. Unfortunately, they didn't make the playoffs, but those two teams, just incredible stories. The way they played the second half of the season, unreal. What do you think? What do you think the future's looking like
For the Jags or for the NFL or for the Lions?
for the
The
Jags?
Lions whooped our behinds by 26, I believe. So
Yes.
very proud of those guys. That's definitely team number 2 under our roof here. My wife
Yeah.
is getting into the football quite a bit now, so it's fun to see. Um, the Jaguars have the right head coach. They have the right quarterback. I'm convinced of both of those things. The coach one's the easiest actually, because for a minute our quarterback had a rough go with his first year coach, and then um, this was kind of the beginning of his true rookie season, as many say around here, and need a little bit of time to get going this year in certain types of situations. I guess is one way to kind of say it. We had trouble converting for touchdowns and made some unnecessary mistakes, and once we turn the corner this year, I think the future suggests that we're on the right path. Perennial playoff contender comes to mind. Like, can we do this a second time? Can we start by just getting in through winning the division again? I think the other 3 teams that we compete with twice a year, I don't think we know who any of their quarterbacks are going to be right now, and I think they all just finished getting worse or weaker, or however you want to term that. We're the only team in the division that I think took a jump, and so that's awesome. And I think the difference I watch all the games still, and I know you do too. The way that some of these teams can consistently make big plays or funnel the game through their superstars, like the way Travis Kelce was still able to be utilized. He had 14 catches, 98 yards, 2 touchdowns, and so he beat us. We have good players. We don't necessarily have guys that Trevor can ride to get to finish the job. And I think I look at like the tackling in the pass rush and some of the things that like the 49ers tackle like madmen, and both them and the Cowboys have an extremely disruptive pass rush and some real kind of people to fear that line up across the ball. I think we've got very good defensive players, but how many of those guys do you need to like account for in a situation that's, those plays where the quarterback's already kind of got an idea that this guy's probably going to come for me here in a minute, and do we have that yet? I don't know. So the fact that we went from 3 wins to 10, and before the 3-win season we had 1. My gosh, just like, let's have a good draft and a good free agency period and get the right guys back. And the belief is already there. And the talk around here locally is that Trevor now does not have to learn a new playbook. So he had one playbook his senior year at Clemson, another one with Urban Meyer. This is his 3rd offensive system in 3 years. He has said around the building and interviews I've picked up on that he feels at peace with the fact that he doesn't have to do any of that anymore. You just come back and expand on what they already know. And we're going to have Christian Kirk back and Zay Jones, and we're talking about resigning Evan Ingram. And then Calvin Ridley's the wild card. He's eligible to be reinstated here in a couple weeks. And, I heard yesterday we already reported on April 17th again for workouts. So it's going quick. We're building a new practice facility. The guys still office out of the same building. Not office, but the players in the front office walk in the same door. So I'll hold the door for, I've walked in with Trevor before. I hold the gate for these guys. I walk to the parking lot and the general manager's next to me. I have lunch next to the president, and you start to kind of become very close to everybody because it's a smaller market and it's an older facility, and so our team is very together and the community is really coming together here at this time, and we just need to sustain that energy until we get into next year.
Well, and speaking of kind of coming together and feeling a part of it, is there, being that you obviously you've never been a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, is it like, okay, I'm working for the Jaguars, you automatically feel like this is your team now, or is there almost a process you go through where you're like, okay, I like these guys, I want to root for them to win, because you're on the business side and you already have your favorite team going into this job with the Jaguars. The Jaguars were not it. Same with your baseball jobs. None of those teams were your favorite team going into that job. How do you get from entering the door on your first day as this is a job to all of a sudden this is your team?
It's an awesome question, and um, it's not hard for me to answer because I've challenged myself with that kind of throughout the evolution of my career, I guess we'll call it now. I mean, I think that's a healthy thing to call it, even though I had a period where I wasn't working in sports. Um, the older I am and the less time I have for things personal to me that aren't family related. So for the listeners, I have a 7-year-old daughter. Um, I have a wife to take care of. I have we have a little house here that we're renting that we need to make sure we're on top of. There's groceries to buy. There's fun things to do in Florida on the weekends. So stay mindful of that. And you kind of realize that your job is an extension of. It has nothing to do with who you used to like or what you liked before you started. It becomes more personal than that. It becomes about the longevity of this new career, this chance we took to move from Michigan to Florida. It boils down to wanting my kid to attend the same school and wanting my wife to be happy here and wanting us to have lots of adventures to look forward to and not having to pick up and do this all over again. And so by the time you even start your new job, I want to couple that comment with being an Ohio State football fan. I had 2 important games against Trevor Lawrence. We witnessed 2, I believe, the equivalent of a Final Four game, the college football playoff. They beat us once, we beat them. And I compared Trevor Lawrence in the way I felt having to go up against him to like a Christian Laettner or a Grant Hill from those old Duke teams. Those guys they were going to beat you and you didn't like it. And Trevor was that way for me. And the fact that he was now this number 1 draft pick down in Jacksonville, I made that connection right away. And then I'm guilty of thinking Urban might have had a chance in the NFL, and a lot of that's because he won us a trophy at Ohio State. But it was as simple as saying this is our livelihood now. This is different. And so what happens is if you approach it with that kind of larger perspective, out your lens is bigger. You have a bigger perspective, and you look at it from the wider view. Then this is about everybody's happiness that in the community that I'm moving to. What better way to have people get along? What better way to like give the kids something fun to wear to school on Fridays? We started doing teal colored Jaguar gear, and the mayor got behind it. And the bridges have teal lights on them, and the businesses say "Go Jaguars" in the windows downtown. And people are showing up to send the team to the airport. People are going to Waffle House after games because Trevor Lawrence went to Waffle House after we beat the Chargers. And then me and my wife go to Waffle House for breakfast on my day off. And so looky here, look what's happening. And then all these people in town who have been, I used to do that 15 years ago, but I don't even go near that place anymore because you guys stink, are now calling us saying, I feel bad. I have been away for so long, but can I come back? And that's where it becomes fruitful from a pay the bills scenario. Now everybody's running to their hand in the air saying, I want to do this. And so it's a completely different landscape. Now, I don't take those things for granted. I think of these as 2 different things, but I really care about, I'm a very loyal person, and I know you are too. And that's the reason we're talking today, right? I mean, I would do this 100 times for you if you asked. And so that loyalty piece is something that I just right away, if you're going to pay me to work in sports and give me like the clothes and the stuff, then please put it on me, because I'll go around and tell everybody about that. And I just enjoy that. And so I just volunteered today to help out at a dog and cat rescue event. They called the number, and they said, "Hey, you helped me out with something a long time ago. What about this?" And I said, "I'll do that for you. I like cats and dogs." And so now I'm doing, the reaches it has into the community. You don't understand until you're a part of it, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, hey, I gotta tell you, going through this conversation, there's so many more things I'm curious about, and again, like I mentioned earlier, the stories you must have. We are gonna have to get you back again. We'll have to make you what they call in the biz a recurring guest.
Interesting.
But hey, before I do let you go, there's a way I like to end the program, and I'm sure you're aware. You've known me a long time. I'm a list guy. I like lists. I like rankings. I like Mount Rushmores. So we're gonna end the program here, Mike, with you giving me a few lists. First list, your 5 favorite baseball players of all time, not in order, and I'm not talking greatest players. I'm talking about your 5 favorite players.
For sure, Ryan Sandberg and Mark Grace. Ian Kinsler, because he was with us in Texas when I was there, and I had a chance to drink some beers with him one night. And so he was kind of almost like an unofficial friend in my mind. So that's an easy one to put in there. And then White Sox guys, probably. Frank Thomas was big. And I want to miss Chase Utley.
Okay.
Glad I went ahead far enough to, and I know these are different generations.
That's okay.
Do you know your list, or is that not?
Yeah,
is that
no,
not critical?
I think I could name it pretty quickly. I think my first favorite player was Jose Canseco, so I got to have him in the 5. My next favorite player was Will Clark. So he's in there, the lefty. Also, my favorite player, he was my 3rd favorite player, and to this day, still my favorite player, Eric Davis, 44 Magnum, center field, Cincinnati Reds, 1990 World Series champion. That is 3. And then it's crazy because during his playing days, I didn't really appreciate him probably enough, took him for granted. Second baseman, Detroit Tigers, Lou Whitaker. Big fan of Lou Whitaker. And then, for my 5th, it's tough to say. I was a huge Cincinnati Reds fan. Truthfully, the year that they won the World Series, I kind of hopped on the bandwagon. But man, I liked a lot of those guys: Mariano Duncan, Chris Sabo, Barry Larkin, the bullpen guys, Rob Dibble. So I would kind of lump all those guys in there maybe.
What number was Dibble? 66 or something? He had a weird.
I can't remember. I got a crazy story about Rob Dibble. I went to a Reds Cubs game at Wrigley Field. Went to the game, obviously being a Reds fan. This is when I was a kid, and it was a tie game, bottom of the 9th. Chicago Cubs, bases loaded. I believe there was 2 outs. The game ends on a Rob Dibble bean the batter, which then obviously forced in the winning run. That's how the game ended. That was
number 49 in your score.
Okay,
number 1 in your heart. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? And I know he played for the Cincinnati Reds towards the end of his career, but definitely my 5th favorite player. Again, not in any order. like with the exception of Eric Davis, number one all time, I got to have number five, the fifth guy in that group, Ken Griffey Jr. for sure. I just love that swing he had. So, all right, next question. And again, this might be a little bit. I tell everyone it might be tough to come up with five, but how about 3 to 5 of your favorite baseball movies of all time?
No, I don't see. I'm not a big sports movie fan in general, and I hope that doesn't burst your bubble. You can go ahead and
Well, I mean, you've seen baseball movies, you've seen Major
I've
League.
seen.
I
I
mean,
think baseball movies historically are maybe the better sports movies. It's
I
harder
would
to make
agree.
a
Yeah,
football movies are the hardest. I know that.
yeah, yeah,
Baseball and basketball movies aren't much better.
yeah,
So Field of Dreams for sure, and then Sandlot, and
yeah.
I don't. I mean, after that's where I mean, is
There's
it?
so many classics. Have you ever seen The Natural?
I
Roy
don't
Howard?
think so.
Oh,
I don't think so.
Mike, you're watching that this weekend. I'm texting you. You would love it. It not only is it probably the best baseball movie of all time, it might be the best movie of all time. Uh,
Okay.
Starring Robert Redford. Oh, classic film. You're watching it this weekend. I'm going to hold you to it. All right. So, kind of the reason I was asking you baseball questions is that's a connection of ours. Obviously, I think when I think of you, even though I know you're working in the NFL now, I think Mike Benko. I think baseball. But there is one bonus question I like to ask that's a little bit more specific to the person I'm interviewing. All right, so that question for you, Mike. I know you are a huge music fan. In fact, another thing we could get into, you and I have debated music a lot in our past. We listen to completely different kinds of music. Um, but anyway, you're a big music buff. I know you love seeing I know you love seeing live shows. Give us 3 to 5 of your favorite concerts you've ever been to.
So I think what's funny about my music affinity is I haven't challenged myself to listen to any new music in like a very, very long time.
Same.
15 years, maybe 20 years. I mean, it's an embarrassing amount of time since I've explored music. I don't pay for, Apple Music or iTunes. I don't even know the terminology. I don't have any of those subscriptions. My coolest, favorite, hippest band right now is 21 Pilots. I like listening to. They've been around for a long time, and I just think that's kind of edgy to me still. But there's so many levels beyond that now that I don't even know anything about. But um, uh, Dave Matthews is my favorite, so you could pick 100 of those. I mean, I've been to 80 of them. So
Wow.
um, there's best versions of those concerts that I could cite, but the details wouldn't be as exciting, I don't think. And so I guess number one, or my favorite in general, is just that collection of memories. That's 23, 24 years of going all over the country with some good friends and um, spending quality time together, and so that's important. Um, I'll tell you, a Rage Against the Machine concert is pretty memorable. I went to one, I think it was back to back nights in Chicago. We had regular seats on the rail, so it was like a row one situation. I think it was upper level across from the stage. So we watched the show in Chicago, and then the next night we drove to the Pontiac Silverdome, or
Oh,
no, not the Silverdome or Auburn Hill Pistons Arena, I guess. So
probably the
so the
Palace. Yeah,
Palace.
yeah.
Silverdome would be a little bit big for that, but I think they did play there too. So anyway, then we had pit seats that night, and when and on top of having pit seats down on the floor, um, there's a bunch of people that also kind of ran through the security of the lower level and like stampeded to add to the people. I think this happens sometimes. So there was twice the capacity there should have been, on that floor where like the hockey rink would be, or the basketball court would be put down. And so we I noticed that if you were to jump up, like you're jumping to the music, you're kind of moshing, but you're just kind of jumping up. Like you could get caught up on people's shoulders, and you wouldn't land for about 2 more minutes. Like you'd just kind of be floating, you'd be suspended on top of people. So you weren't crowd surfing, but you were sandwiched in the. So you had to kind of flow like a tidal wave. That was scary, and there were times when we didn't know if we were going to get knocked down and trampled, or had to like get out of there and come up for air. And then on the drive home from that show, we got a flat tire, and so we had a state trooper have to come fix the tire for us because none of us punk kids knew how to fix a flat. And then I volunteered to drive home on the spare. We were taking one of my buddy's mom's vans or something. I drove home on a spare tire. Could only go like 55 from Detroit to Holland in the middle of the night. And so I remember I bought one of those snow pastries that Hostess makes, those snowballs. It's like coconut. It tastes like crap, and it was the only time I ever bought one of those. And I remember it because it was associated with a poor night. Like it was just tough. There's a bunch of other concerts that have been extremely fun to see. We just a couple of unique scenarios. I took Mark Paulson one time to like think of the Riviera Theater in Chicago. It's one of those classic theaters, and we saw Blink 182 when they had a dollar bill tour. So it was a $1 for tickets. Wow. And I remember I had some of my friends go on the computer at Hope College and try to score some $1 tickets. They lasted like 30 seconds. And one of my friends, who's still a good friend to this day, was able to get them. And so I went with Mark to that. And then there was one, no, that was something else. My memory doesn't serve very well here. So that was a Smashing Pumpkins event for $20.
Okay.
Which is incredibly unique. That was at the Metro. And the Metro is where the Pumpkins got their start. So this was a Christmas tour at their home venue. That one I drove with Jordy Campbell. It was snowing and we were in high school, and he drove us all the way there with his mom's van during a snowstorm right before Christmas. And we were given this coupon, and the coupon said redeem for one autographed item of the band. And I was like, I'm a sports guy. I like collectibles. So we stood outside the Metro in the cold. Me and Jordy walked in. We were about 8 rows from the stage. I think I got a Billy Corgan guitar pick after the concert, but I took back this postcard, and I didn't know how to use the mail at the time. I didn't mail a lot when I was, whatever, old, 18 or whatever. So my mom took it to work, and I remember she put the Smashing Pumpkins autographed redemption card in an envelope and wrote the address on it. Whereas you're supposed to fill it out like a postcard and drop it in, so when it arrives, they know what it is. They're not going to open mail from some strange lady who wrote her own envelope. So I never got my Smashing Pumpkins Christmas autograph gift, which I think I would still have today. And then the Blink 182 was $1, but I think that was in college. But
okay,
sometimes you kind of pose as these fans of bands for a night. You ever get that feeling where you like, I'm going to pretend I'm really into you because I think it might be fun that way?
Yes, I had that in 6th grade when my parents dragged our family to a Garth Brooks concert, also at the Palace of Auburn Hills.
Garth Brooks doesn't seem like your speed.
No, but I was in 6th grade. I was at an age where there was not a lot of choices. I did not have a choice to say, no, I don't want to go to that concert. It was a family outing, and yeah, and I will say it ended up being pretty entertaining. That was back in his day when he was, flying on ropes and stuff on stage. So from an entertainment aspect, it was pretty cool.
Do you remember the time we were working our summer cleaning jobs at Hope, and we decided to go to a Tigers baseball game? And I know I had one of my first cars that was, it was used and it wasn't made for long road trips, but I said, I'll just give this one a try. So I raced home from my cleaning job, and somehow I linked up with you, and I was leaving work early. So I had to rush home, and I ran over the neighbor's cat because
no way.
And it was my boss's cat, who was the same.
Oh, man.
And I don't want to tell this story for that reason, but it gives a little context because I always remember that. And it was a sad start to that afternoon. But I picked you up, I think, and we headed towards Detroit and had to stop and pick up Peter Huntsberger, was working at the bank. He's a financial guy or something at a bank in Ann Arbor, and we picked him up, and then we drove on to the game, and then I drove us home, and it was the day we left work early, killed a cat, went to a baseball game, and that's how dedicated we were, even at a young age.
Oh yeah, wow, that's quite a story. I don't remember going to that game, honestly. I don't.
I don't know who else it would have been, because
I'm sure it was me. I mean,
Peter was my connection to you, and I picked him up, or I specifically remember that. So
yeah, I'm sure it happened. I'm sure it happened. Oh well, Mike, there's so many more things that I want to get into, and I know there's a bunch more stories that you could share for our entertainment. And we're definitely gonna have you back. This was awesome. And we will, hopefully soon you can come back and we can just talk about your stories in the world of professional sports. But yeah, thank you so much for being on the program today.
Thanks, Kurt. I really enjoyed it.
Please subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share.